In lieu of today's daily vlog, I wanted to take some time and answer a serious question posed by a viewer, Nitin, on my Surfing Violinist Facebook page. Normally, I get, just little, hey, I like this video, could you, do a violin cover of this song? But this was a serious question, and so Nitin had asked, recently, the WHO released a report which stated Delhi as the most polluted city in the world, 10 times more polluted than infamous Beijing. This was followed by a New York Times reporter who decided to move out of India, citing his son facing respiratory issues. Delhi residents don't have much of a choice, but foreigners do, and you, as a foreigner with young kids, have decided to live here. I would love to know your opinion on this, especially knowing the fact that you have traveled to so many countries as well. For those of you who don't know, who may be watching this video or my channel for the first time, I've been living in Delhi area for about 4 years. We're back in America right now, but we will be heading back after we renew my son's visa. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and my son is 2. He was actually born in Delhi. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through this New York Times editorial written by Gardner Harris, May 29, 2015, and kind of respond as someone who's lived there myself. So Gardner Harris wrote, "For weeks, the breathing of my 8-year-old son, Bram, had become more labored, his medicinal inhaler increasingly vital, and then one terrifying night, 9 months after we moved to this megacity, Bram's inhaler stopped working and his gasping became panicked. My wife called a friend who recommended a private hospital miles away. I carried Bram to the car while my wife brought his older brother. India's traffic is among the world's most chaotic, and New Delhi's streets are crammed with trucks at night when road signs become largely ornamental. We undertook one of the most frightening journeys of our lives with my wife in the back seat cradling Bram's hand." Okay, first of all, let me just say this. I don't like this style of writing when we're discussing real-life circumstances that people deal with every day. This is why I couldn't stand Behind the Beautiful Forevers, as good as that book was from a literary perspective. What you end up doing is you end up obfuscating reality. You end up hiding it behind this flowery prose. You're not writing Shakespeare here, okay? This needs to be clinical. I just don't appreciate the way that he's setting this up. He's making it like the start of some sort of Hollywood movie as opposed to a dispatch from a location. It's frustrating me already. Just when road signs largely become ornamental. Like don't get pretentious when you're describing what 23 million people are dealing with on a daily basis. And it's all of a sudden we're supposed to care about you more because your skin's white and because you're taking this risk on your own. Like, grow up. If it's too big of a stress for you, then just don't go. Okay? I'm already annoyed by the tone of this piece. When we arrived, doctors infused him with steroids and refused to provide further treatment until a $1,000 charge on my credit card went through. A week later, Bram was able to return home. Okay, I've been to Indian hospitals. If you're getting a $1,000 charge on your on your credit card prior to receiving treatment, yeah, what hospital is it? I love that he just randomly says a medical facility many miles away. What medical facility? What many miles away? Where is it? I mean, $1,000 really in India? I mean, there are people who take flights to India to get medical treatment because the cost is so cheap. So, I mean, he's already like stacking the deck, making this sound like this is some harrowing event. My son was born in an Indian hospital. I was treated in an Indian hospital in Varanasi in 2002. So I have some Indian medical history. Indian healthcare system is not great for people who are below middle class. Like it's pretty harrowing. I mean, how much would this have cost in America? Like, now, India is to blame for the respiratory problems, and we'll get to that. I'm not saying that Delhi doesn't have faults that need to be worked on here, but it's just the tone of this. He's just like front-loading this with all this tension, this Hollywood-style tension to make you feel for him, and the plight that he and his family are going through. When I became a South Asian correspondent for the New York Times 3 years ago, my wife and I, I've got 4 years under my belt, so I can take this tone with him. I've been there for 4 years, and judging from, this is the other thing that frustrates me here. Judging from the way he's describing them driving through the streets, it's like something that they didn't do very often. It's like, we do that all the time, okay? So that type of expat American in India, and India who never even drives, still after 3 years, describing Delhi traffic as some sort of nightmare. Get over, really? Like, you're 3 years there and you're still describing it like with this exoticism? Really? When I became South Asia correspondent for the New York Times 3 years ago, my wife and I were both excited and prepared for difficulties. Insistent beggars, endemic dengue, and summertime temperatures that reach 120 degrees. Again, he's just front-loading this debate to make it look like, a cesspool. But we had a little inkling just how dangerous the city would be for our boys. Ooh, foreshadowing! All these freaking storytelling tropes that don't belong in a New York Times. New York Times, what a piece of garbage. Journalism is just dead. We gradually learned that Delhi's true menace came from its air, water, food, and flies. Okay, again, he just keeps front-loading it with all this, harrowing detail. Okay, no, this article is supposed to be about how the air has affected your son's health. And now you're saying water, food, and flies. Why do you need to keep front-loading this? Why do you have to keep bringing it up? What are you talking about? What is the point of this post? Just to throw Delhi under the bus, to throw India under the bus, to throw 23 million people living in Delhi under the bus, to throw 1 billion people living in India under the bus? Is that what you're trying to do? These perils sicken, disable, and kill millions in India annually, making for one of the worst public health disasters in the world. Delhi, we discovered, is quietly suffering from a dire pediatric respiratory crisis. With a recent study, he does link it, so, credit to him on that. Indian Express did this piece, and it is indicting. I'm not trying to make light of the air crisis in Delhi. It is indicting. It was done by an independent Indian think tank, commissioned by the government, legit. It's something that people need to pay attention to. Showing that nearly half the city's 4.4 million school children have irreversible lung damage from the poisonous air. For most Indians, these are inescapable horrors. Yes, thank you. But there are thousands of others who have chosen to live here, including some trying to save the world, others hoping to describe it, and still others intent on getting their own small piece of it. It is an eclectic community of expatriates and millionaires, including car executives from Detroit, tech geeks from the Bay Area, cancer researchers from Maryland, and diplomats from Dublin. I would fit into the describe it category. You can maybe call me a citizen journalist or something like that. I don't even know what I'm a YouTuber, and there's no room in anyone's vocabulary for that because nobody believes those exist. Over the last year, often over chai and samosas at local dhabas or whiskey and chicken tikka at glittering embassy parties, we have obsessively discussed whether we are pursuing our careers at our children's expense. I've never had that conversation once. And I just never have had it. So you're obsessive about it? Maybe you're in the wrong place, dude. And I have a friend who had to leave India because of a children's respiratory crisis. They got stuck in Thailand due to some visa problems, and their daughter's lungs just couldn't handle it. She was having some serious problems. So I'm not opposed to this guy leaving, as we shall see, and I'm not opposed to my friend leaving. What I'm opposed to is the tone that he's taking here. We have the privilege to leave. There are 23 million people who don't have that privilege. Don't just treat them like we're more important than them. Oh man, I shouldn't be putting my family at risk. Yeah, okay, well then get off the planet Earth. Do you see there's gun violence in America, and we can't escape seeing that on the news. Our Indians are constantly lecturing me about how bad America is because that's all our news ever talks about. Foreigners have lived in Delhi for centuries, of course, but the air and the mounting research into its effects have become so frightening that some feel it is unethical. Now this is where, see, this is just ridiculous. If your kid has an irreversible medical problem that is going to kill them next year, then yeah, you get out. But is it unethical to raise your children there when 23 million other human beings are there trying to carve a niche for their kids and they don't have an option to get out? I feel like we are in Game of Thrones, basically. And what it comes down to is, instead of houses, with family names, what we have is nations or linguistic groups or races, whatever that term means anymore. I would rather go with ethnicities. At least that makes more sense. We talk a lot about soldiers defending our nation's honor and fighting for freedoms. What? I feel like we need more soldiers like me, like what my family is doing, and that is being non-governmental ambassadors and trying to understand one another so that we don't have to rely on soldiers to fix things in the end. When we have these reductionist kind of diatribes written by New York Times correspondents that just make India look like this cesspool, Like this is the kind of thing that lead to rifts in foreign policy. This is it. Like the front line should not be soldiers. It should be people. It should be us. It should be citizens talking to one another. And so I can't stand this article. India does have problems with air quality, Delhi especially, but it's out in the open now, so they're not going to hide from it. But it's, I mean, everyone is saying it, including Indian independent think tanks. This is not just the WHO, you know, dumping on Delhi. This is everyone like, okay, this is happening. India's going to have to deal with it. Delhi's going to have to deal with it. In the meantime, though, I just don't want to see this throwing people who don't have privilege under the bus. You know, is it unethical for me to be over? That's just ludicrous. It's unethical to treat other human beings because of their place of birth as less than human. That's what's unethical. And I'm sick of that. I'm sick of this sort of Game of Thrones way of dealing with foreign policy, which is basically my house is over here and I'm gonna stick with House America, and your house is over there, and you can stay in House India. And in the meantime, we are just going to backstab each other and backtalk each other and treat each other like we're gonna prey on any weakness we can find in one another so that we can forward our interests in the world. I know this sounds idealistic, but I think we're all human. I think we can agree on that much. That is not in dispute here. And I feel like so much foreign policy, even in 2015, is predicated on this need to portray others as the enemy. We cannot find a way to understand one another up front, then we are going to have to depend on soldiers to defend, you know, ourselves. And we're not even the thing is, we're not even defending ourselves from others. We're defending ourselves from ourselves because we have this kind of reductionist drivel just designed to make others exist. We're all humans, and if people are going to be dying in Delhi, I should be willing to die with them.